I had hidden my assets in a warehouse for years. No one knew about it. Not my daughter. Not my relatives. I wasn't hiding it because I was stingy. I hid it because I knew one thing. The moment money gets exposed, people's true faces do too. That night, I was asleep when my phone buzzed. A motion alert from the warehouse camera. 1:18 a.m. I opened the feed. At first, all I could see was a flashlight beam cutting through the dust. Then a figure appeared at the warehouse door. I zoomed in, and my heart clenched. My daughter's husband. Kyle. He opened the door like he had a key. No hesitation. No looking around. He stepped inside and shut the door behind him. I waited for him to come back out. 10 seconds. 30 seconds. 2 minutes. Nothing. Then the camera flickered. The screen glitched. A sharp crackling sound came through, like a wire had been cut, and suddenly the image went black. I called Kyle. He didn't answer. I called my daughter. She picked up, her voice thick with sleep. "Dad, why are you calling this late?" I said something that made even my own blood run cold. "Honey, Kyle just went into my warehouse. The camera died. He never came back out." She went completely silent. Then, in a shaking voice, she asked, "What are you talking about?" "Kyle is lying right next to me." I went cold, because if Kyle was in bed beside her, then who had just walked into my warehouse? And if it wasn't Kyle, why did he look so much like him that I recognized him instantly? That warehouse wasn't some movie-style vault filled with gold. But to me, it was a lifeline. Inside, I kept equipment, valuable inventory, contract documents, a backup copy of my will, and a small safe with USB drives. Everything that, in the wrong hands, could change someone's life overnight. I hid it because my daughter is kind. And kind, in this world, often means easy to influence. And Kyle. Ever since the wedding, he had that scent about him, the kind of man who doesn't ask how you're doing, only what you own. But I never gave anyone the address. I never even admitted the warehouse existed. I upgraded security cameras, motion sensors, a private lock, and yet tonight, someone opened that door like they belonged there. I got in my car immediately. The roads were empty. Wind slammed against the windshield. Streetlights stretched endlessly ahead like a tunnel with no exit. I'm not a man who fears the dark. But what made my chest tighten wasn't the night, it was the silence. No messages. No calls. Not a single sign of life. When I arrived, the exterior lights were still on. The warehouse door was closed. No signs of forced entry. No damage. It looked normal. Too normal. Like whoever went in didn't break in at all. Like they had permission. I stood in front of the door, my hand resting on the lock, and one thought kept echoing in my head. If Kyle was really lying next to my daughter, then who just walked into my warehouse wearing his face? That's the kind of question that makes most people turn around and leave. But I didn't. Because what's inside that warehouse isn't just money. It's the kind of truth that, if I don't uncover it now, I could tear my family apart. I video called my daughter while standing right outside the warehouse. She turned the camera on. I could see Kyle in the bed behind her, lightly snoring. She whispered, "Dad, do you see?" "He's here." I looked at the screen, looked at Kyle, then looked at the warehouse door in front of me. My hand went ice cold. I said very slowly, "Turn on the light. Show me his face clearly." She moved the camera closer. It was Kyle's face. No mistake. So who was the figure on my warehouse camera? I ended the call and checked the warehouse system on my phone again. The camera was completely offline, but the sensor log still showed it clearly. Door opened at 1:18, closed at 1:19. Someone had gone in. I unlocked the door. It swung open, and the smell of metal and old dust rushed out. Inside, it was pitch black. I turned on the warehouse lights. The warehouse was empty. Not empty of inventory, empty of people. No footsteps. No breathing. Nothing. But there was one strange thing. A fresh streak of mud across the concrete floor, leading from the entrance deeper inside, then stopping in the middle of the warehouse as if the person had simply vanished. I aimed my flashlight down, followed the muddy trail, and spotted something on the ground. A key. It wasn't mine, but I recognized it instantly. The custom keychain Kyle always used. I stood frozen in the middle of the warehouse, staring at that key. And for the first time in my life, my warehouse felt less like protection and more like a trap. There was no ghost. I don't believe in ghosts, but I do believe in something far more dangerous. Someone was pretending to be Kyle, and they wanted me to see exactly what they had left behind. I was about to step back out, close the door, and call security. But right then, I heard a soft click. Not the wind, metal. Something lightly tapping against the floor deeper inside. I froze, turned off my flashlight, listened. Another sound. Click, click. It was coming from behind the back wall where a narrow utility space sat, half hidden behind storage shelves no one ever paid attention to. I moved slowly. My heartbeat was loud in my ears. Not fear of ghosts, just the reality of standing alone in a warehouse at 2 a.m., hearing something where no one should be. I raised the flashlight and aimed it toward the corner. The shelves blocked part of the view. I reached out and pulled one aside. Behind it was a small metal door, the kind used for maintenance access. And what made my skin crawl, I didn't remember it being there. Not a vague memory. Not uncertainty. I knew this warehouse down to every bolt. I had checked every corner myself. That door felt new. I touched the handle. Ice cold. I tried it. Locked. I turned back, looking at the key lying on the floor. Picked it up. Slid it into the lock. Perfect fit. And in that moment, it hit me. The key Kyle left behind wasn't an accident. It was an invitation. A lure. I stood there, hand on the key, staring at that metal door, and one question burned through my mind. Who put this door here? And what do they want me to see behind it? I took a breath, turned the key. The lock clicked. The door creaked open with a long, dragging sound, and the darkness behind it swallowed my flashlight like a mouth waiting to close. Behind that metal door wasn't some cinematic secret room. It was a narrow utility corridor, the kind used for wiring, plumbing, and old emergency access routes that get forgotten over time. But this one hadn't been forgotten. There were fresh shoe prints on the floor. The dust had been disturbed, swept aside in a thin trail, and the smell, sweat, mixed with new plastic, like someone had passed through not long ago. I aimed my flashlight deeper. In the corner of the corridor sat a black fabric bag, tossed aside in a hurry. I opened it. Inside was a silicone mask, a mask made to look exactly like Kyle's face. I froze. Couldn't breathe. So there were no ghosts. No mysterious shadow. Just something worse, someone real, pretending to be Kyle. I dropped down onto the floor, my hands shaking. One thought kept looping in my head. Who did this? And why? I examined the mask. There were strands of hair stuck inside, a piece of adhesive tape. Whoever wore it had taken it off and discarded it here like a used prop. So what was the goal? If they wanted to steal, they would have already done it. But everything was still there, the warehouse untouched, the safe intact. They didn't take anything, which means they wanted me to believe something. To suspect Kyle? To tear my family apart? I pulled out my phone and called Dana, my lawyer. No answer. Then I called Rick, my PI. He picked up immediately. I said one sentence. I've got a mask. Looks exactly like Kyle. In my warehouse. Rick went silent for a beat, then said, Don't touch anything else. Take photos. Step out. Lock the place down. This is dirty. I looked down the dark corridor ahead of me, and for the first time, I felt it clearly. I wasn't just in a warehouse. I was standing inside a setup, and whoever was behind it wanted me to walk straight into the next scene. I stepped back into the main warehouse, locked the metal door, then locked the main entrance. Sitting in my car, I was still breathing hard when I called my daughter again. Lock your bedroom door. Don't let Kyle leave. And don't say anything to him. She panicked. Dad, what's going on? I said it straight. Someone impersonated Kyle and broke into my warehouse. They left a mask. Silence. Then she slowly turned the phone toward the bed. Kyle was still there, sleeping. I knew that feeling. Looking at someone you trust and wondering if you're still in reality or already inside someone else's script. Rick arrived 20 minutes later. He didn't rush, didn't speculate. He worked. Photos of the shoe prints, samples from the adhesive, close inspection of the lock. Then he stood up and gave it to me clean. Whoever did this had a key or knew the code. No forced entry. That landed heavy, because keys and codes, those were limited. Me and a small circle of people who had ever helped with the warehouse. Security, the facility manager, a locksmith. Rick continued. This isn't about theft. It's staging. They want you to suspect your son-in-law. But the real objective is usually something else. Push you to open everything up. Reveal layout. Reveal where you keep what. And yeah, that hit. If I hadn't come tonight, I wouldn't have opened that metal door. I wouldn't have exposed that corridor. I wouldn't have walked the exact path they needed me to walk. But I did. I followed the script. I looked at Rick. So how do we break it? He gave a thin smile. We write our own. He leaned closer, voice low. Let them believe you're scared, that you're about to move assets. People like this, they don't just watch once, they come back to confirm. Now we were talking, because here's the truth. You don't beat a setup by reacting. You beat it by controlling the next move. I nodded slowly. The fear was still there, but it had direction now. Mystery only holds power while it's unknown. The second you accept there's a real person behind it, it becomes a game. And games can be won. Rick told me to do one thing. Send a message to the warehouse group workers, manager, anyone who had ever been involved. Simple. Direct. Loud enough to reach the wrong ears. I typed, security breach at the warehouse. I'm moving the safe and all documents within 24 hours. Anyone approaching will be recorded. I hit send. 5 minutes later, my phone rang. Unknown number. A man's voice. Low. Trying to sound polite. Sir, I heard your warehouse had an issue. I know one of the guards. I might be able to help. I didn't play along. Who are you? He hesitated. I'm a friend of Kyle. There it was again. Kyle. They kept pulling his name into this like they wanted me to anchor suspicion there. Rick gave me a small hand signal. Stretch it. So, I said calmly, fine. Come by tomorrow. 2 p.m. I already knew he'd show, because the moment you say you're moving assets, anyone running a setup like this panics. Not because they're afraid, but because they haven't gotten what they came for yet. That night, Rick got to work. New camera angles hidden, overlapping blind spots. A bait box placed in the warehouse, labeled USB plus documents. Inside? Nothing valuable, but rigged with a trigger sensor. If someone came back, they wouldn't resist that label. And the moment they touched it, the mystery would end. No more shadows, no more masks, just evidence. I sat in my car, watching the warehouse from a distance, and for the first time, I saw it clearly. This wasn't just a storage space anymore. It was a stage. But this time, I wasn't the one being played. I was the one setting the scene. Side 1. 6. a.m. The motion alert hit. A figure appeared at the side entrance, dressed in black. Clean movement. No hesitation. No scanning. This wasn't someone guessing. This was someone who knew. He unlocked the metal access, slipped into the utility corridor, the exact path I had discovered. He avoided the main door. He'd already learned the camera layout. He moved straight to the bait box, opened it, searched, took photos, and the moment he lifted the fake USB, the silent trigger activated. Camera zoomed in, tight, on his face. Rick leaned forward, zoomed further, and that's when it hit. Not Kyle. Not anyone connected to Kyle, at least not directly. It was one of the warehouse security guards. The same guy who had greeted me casually every time I showed up. Rick whispered, "That's your insider. He's the one selling access." And, staging the scene, I clenched my fist. Of course. Security has movement rights. Security can install or miss a door. Security can disable cameras. Security can plant props like that Kyle mask. This wasn't random. This was infrastructure-level access. But here's the real question, and don't dodge it. A guard doesn't build something this elaborate for fun. He's working for someone. Rick didn't even look at me when he said it. Now we find who's paying him. And yeah, your instinct went straight to Kyle. Makes sense. The whole setup points at him. His face, his name, his pattern. But slow down for a second. That might be exactly what they want you to do. Because think like a predator, not a victim. If I wanted to manipulate you, I wouldn't hide the suspect. I'd highlight him. I'd make sure every clue screams Kyle, so you lock onto him and stop looking wider. So here's the uncomfortable truth. Kyle is either involved or being framed as the perfect distraction. And right now, you don't have enough to choose. Don't rush that call. That's how people lose. What you do have now is leverage. Real leverage. Rick didn't rush in to grab the guard. He followed him instead. The guard left the warehouse, got into his car, and drove straight to a small bar. There, he handed an envelope to a man waiting outside. Then that man stepped into the light. Kyle. Kyle glanced around, took the envelope, and slipped it inside his jacket like he'd done it before. It was a transaction. I sat in the car, staring at the screen, my heart pounding like a drum. Kyle, the man who had just been lying in bed beside my daughter, was out there buying information and staging scenes to make me panic, to make the family explode. And for what? Rick gave the answer clean. He wants you scared. Scared enough to open the warehouse, expose the safe, expose the papers. Then, when you try to move everything, he'll offer to help. And help means access. That's how men like him work. They don't rob you head on. They build a situation that makes you hand things over yourself. I closed my eyes and let out a slow breath. I wasn't afraid of the dark anymore. I was afraid of the way people use darkness to control other people. Rick looked at me. You want to end this tonight? Or do you want to set the trap and get a confession? I answered without hesitation. I want the confession. I want him to hang himself with his own words. I sent Kyle a message, sweet. Exactly the kind he likes. Kyle, I heard there was an issue at the warehouse. I'm planning to move the safe and documents. Come help me transport them. I trust you, he replied almost instantly. Yes, Dad. I'm on my way. Don't worry. No. Are you okay? No concern. Just straight to help. Because in his mind, the reward was finally within reach. Rick and Dana were already in position. Cameras rolling. Audio recording clean. Legal. The goal wasn't to accuse. The goal was to let Kyle talk himself into the hole. Kyle arrived at my house, putting on that worried tone. Dad, this is dangerous. You shouldn't go alone. I looked him straight in the eye. How do you know it's dangerous? He froze for half a second. Then, Heard from someone. I nodded slowly. From who? He hesitated. You could see it, his brain scrambling for a version that still held together. And right then, Rick played the footage. Kyle, outside the bar, taking the envelope from the guard. Clear. Undeniable. Kyle's face drained of color like someone pulled the blood right out of him. And in that moment, the game flipped completely. No more script, no more acting, just a man, realizing he'd walked straight into someone else's trap. I set the silicone mask on the table. I didn't say a word. I just placed it there. Kyle saw it, and his lips twitched. Then I asked, my voice cold, what exactly did you want me to believe when you had someone wearing your face break into my warehouse? Kyle snapped. You're making this up. Rick played the clip of the guard using the utility corridor. Then the clip of the envelope handoff. Kyle went silent. My daughter stood behind him, one hand over her mouth. In a trembling voice, she whispered, Kyle, what are you doing? And just like that, he changed tactics. I did it for us. Your dad keeps holding on to everything, don't you see that? I cut him off. What do you need, more money? Or the truth? And then it came out. The real sentence. The one he couldn't pull back. I just wanted to know what was in that warehouse. I needed cash fast. Cash fast. Exactly what I expected. I turned to my daughter. You hear that? He's not afraid you'll go without. He's afraid he can't get his hands on what's mine. 40 mine. Even. Kyle took a step forward. You're selfish. I looked right at him and said, selfish with a man who uses masks and lies to manipulate me? Gladly. Dana moved fast. She sent a formal notice to the warehouse management. The guard was suspended immediately, under investigation for unauthorized access and aiding fraud. I changed every lock, every code, and I pulled all sensitive documents out of that place the same night. No more loose ends. Kyle was cut off from everything. No access, no proximity. If he showed up near the warehouse again, it wouldn't be a conversation, it would be legal action. Clean. Final. My daughter collapsed onto the floor, crying, not because of the warehouse, because she had just realized the man she slept next to was capable of building an entire performance just to get to money. That kind of realization doesn't break loudly. It breaks quietly. I sat down beside her and said, steady and clear. You're not wrong for trusting. You're wrong if you keep trusting after you've seen the truth. Kyle still tried, of course. I love you, he said. But love doesn't come with masks. Love doesn't come in envelopes exchanged in the dark. Love doesn't need scripts. That wasn't love. That was access. A few days later, my daughter was calmer. She said, Dad, it feels like a horror movie. I replied, it is. But the real scariest horror stories are the ones written by living people. My warehouse was still there. But what I protected was bigger than that. My daughter would never be controlled by the words, for the family again. Rick summed it up perfectly. They built the horror to make you panic. You didn't panic, so you won. And that's the real moral of the story. Don't fear the darkness. Fear the people who use darkness to manipulate you. I used to think danger was when someone tried to break into my warehouse. I was wrong. The real danger is when they build a story so convincing, so unsettling, that you open the door for them yourself. So let me ask you straight. If you were in that moment, when the mystery starts unfolding, do you rush in alone, chasing answers, walking exactly where they want you to walk? Or do you step back, stay cold, set the trap, and go after the one pulling the strings? I chose the second. Not because it's smarter on paper, but because it's the only way you keep control. Money? You can lose it and earn it back. But the moment someone learns how to control your fear, your reactions, your decisions, they don't just take your assets. They take your life, piece by piece. So don't just ask, What's happening? Ask. Who benefits? If I react, right now, that one question will save you more than any lock ever will. You've got the guard on camera, the act of intrusion, the attempt to access documents, a staged impersonation operation. That's not suspicion anymore. That's a case. Now, the smart move isn't confrontation. It's pressure. You let the guard think he's not caught yet. You track his next move. You follow the money. You let him lead you up the chain. Because guys like him, they don't take risks alone. They answer to someone. And when you pull that thread carefully, you don't just catch the pawn. You catch the hand moving him. Stay cold. Don't blow it early. You're not reacting anymore. You're hunting.